Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton at Big C Sports, coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond, and London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys in Canada. We love you in Africa, the Big C tribe. But there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south in the land of the free and the home of the brave on a beautiful July the 21st, 2020. Round of the Deportes, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Well, Charlton, we're getting these early evening showers down here in the south, as well as dealing with all this COVID-19 pandemic that's going on, and want to say thank you to those frontline healthcare workers, nurses, doctors, first responders, Charlton. I know they're struggling every day, just like the American citizens are struggling every day, fighting off this deadly battle.
And we will keep fighting. We will keep fighting until we win, Big C. I want to say today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you, as well as a fleet of Cadillac cars also all around the world. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing from 3,000 miles away. And I really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. You can also find us on Spotify. Just been added to Spotify. Really appreciate that. You can also follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, Amazon Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. But you better have a smart TV, or you'll be sitting there looking at a still picture. Man, I love taking that pause, Big C. I got to take more pause. I know you've been pausing down there in the rain from the south part of the country, but I will never pause on our Veterans Crisis Hotline. They really are experienced in helping veterans, Big C, and their loved ones get help. Why is that so important to you?
Well, Charlton, it's very important. We never hear our administration talking about expanding, mental health crisis counseling and assistance for our great veterans that serve this country, Charlton. We lose some 22 a day to suicide. You think about that. That number has risen since the current administration has been into place.
Yep.
We give out the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number, Charlton, each of our shows. We need more of Americans to assist our great veterans in helping them through this horrific disease, Charlton. Suicide is a destroyer of families, whether it's young or old, Charlton, and it has afflicted so many Americans, even those that have not been in the military. But as we look at this pandemic crisis that we go through, people get easily distracted thinking about just themselves, and it's rightfully so. As an American, you're taught that. But also think about those who gave you the ability to sit at home with freedom and allow you to think about that. Think about our great veterans that have served this country.
Big C, they have served, and sometimes we forget, but we'll never forget. 800-273-8255, 800-273-8255. You can text 838-255. That's 838-255 and get some help. Also, if you're online, simply go to veteranscrisisline.net. That's veteranscrisisline.net, and I really appreciate anyone reaching out to help a veteran. Also, very happy to be affiliated with Valley Homes Weekly TV on Dish TV, Direct TV, AT&T, Uverse, TV 53, home of the San Francisco Giants and the Say Hey Kid. Just tell them Big C sent you. The goal is simple: recruit 100 real estate brokers, put their property listings on TV, just like McDonald's does it. Car dealerships do it, sports teams do it, and you can watch real estate and TV work for you. 800-772-8624. That's 800-772-8624. Also for opportunities, go to bigcsports.pacwm.com. That's bigcsports.pacwm.com, and you can see opportunities. Big C, I was over at a car dealership today, and funny thing, I saw this. Well, I didn't know she was an attorney, but she was walking around looking at these fancy BMWs, and so as we just started talking, she walks up and says, "So which one is yours?" And I said, "All of them, Big C. I'm just being silly. All of them are mine." And she laughed. And I said, "So what do you do?" She said, "Oh, I'm an attorney." I said, "Oh, so you sue enough people to get enough money to buy these cars, Big C? Your thoughts?"
Well, Charlton, that's what they often do. As we think about attorneys, you got to think about them on different levels.
Yep.
And they've been known as the ambulance chasers, Charlton. But many attorneys can get you out of situations or keep you in situations.
Yeah, it's so funny. And in fact, it's funny how the universe will just align things. I had no idea I was going to meet this woman today. And ironically, I said, so what type of attorney are you? She said, I'm an immigration attorney. And I said, really, have you seen what's been happening up in Portland where POTUS has been sending in federal troops? And a lot of them have been Border Patrol, and they're up in Portland, which is a mostly white city, and they're trying to take away people's, their civil liberties. And I said, have you ever dealt with that? She said, well, that's part of why I'm here, Big C. That make any sense to you, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, the administration, what's actually going on in Portland is actually illegal. The federal government has to get the ability from the state to come in and bring these troops in. These are border guards on the southern border. And I don't know if people still remember where the president said we're under attack from Mexico, where they're overrunning the country.
I remember.
If there's such an urgency down on the southern border, Charlton, to have these troops down there and build this wall, why are he taking the troops from the southern border of the United States, putting them up in Portland? What he is expecting for Portland to be overrun by illegal immigrants?
I guess that's whatever he calls them. He calls them so much for the money he took for the wall and put the troops up in Portland, which is a mostly white city. And ironically, this lawyer that I talked to, Trump is also threatening to send federal forces to Oakland, California, not San Francisco, Big C, where the most of the money is, but to Oakland, because it has a perception of people that are really standing up for their rights. But they want to come into Oakland as opposed to San Francisco. So she's here to help a lot of people with their constitutional rights being infringed upon. But isn't it ironic, in this moment of let's play ball, let's get sports back, Black Lives Matter, the NBA wants to put Black Lives Matter on a basketball court. The NFL is going to allow some athletes to put, whatever logos on the helmet. But the real threat, we just lost John Lewis and over the weekend. And the real threat, Big C, is that sports has taken it's a distraction to what's happening in these major cities. When I listen to the sports guys here in Northern California, they're asking about Damian Lillard. Can he lead Portland to a championship? And Portland's being overrun by federal troops. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, the distraction has always been sports, Charlton. If you look at them trying to put symbolic words and stuff on uniforms and on basketball courts, Charlton, that's really not what's going to change society.
No.
What's going to change society is the lawmakers, Charlton. I know you constantly talk about it in the Constitution that we to perform a more perfect union.
Yeah.
But, when you think about who can make that decision to change the laws, Charlton, there's old aristocratic white men who are sitting in the Senate that are controlling where we are, and also one sitting in the White House. With the stroke of a pen, you can change the destiny of America in any day that you want to. That's all it takes. It doesn't take the protests and anarchy that's going on in the streets of America, forcing American citizens to battle against each other.
Yeah.
The laws can change. But those old white men, Charlton, don't want it to change. They would rather have American citizens battle each other, then send in law enforcement to incarcerate them, Charlton.
Yeah.
And thinking that's forming a more perfect union.
The crazy thing about that, Big C, is they're plain clothes. They don't look like they're regular law enforcement. Could you imagine you're walking around the street and they're down by the courthouses in Portland, and someone can swoop up to you in an unmarked car, and whatever fatigue they're wearing, they can grab you, not tell you why they're arresting you, and detain you, and then take you wherever they're taking you. And people are not even paying attention to this because they want to know, can Portland win a championship? And it's amazing because now they want to come into Oakland. Governor Gavin Newsom saying, no, you won't. And so we're seeing a standoff right now as the Giants and the A's are playing tonight in San Francisco. But the real thing that's, I won't say scary, but it's a shame that we talked about this a couple of months ago. This is a preview of what he's planning on the election night on November 3rd. By the 1st of November, they're going to have federal troops in the streets again, try and intimidate voters. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, think if these were Negroes that were dressed in battle fatigue
Yeah.
going up and down the street, grabbing people, throwing them in unmarked cars. Think about the outcry that they would be in America. But you have a president who is not about the people of the United States, but about himself, arresting these people. And you got to understand the reason why he's doing this to these people, Charlton, that he's trying to take them off the voter poll.
Yep.
If you're charged with a felony in the United States, you can no longer vote.
Yep.
So the more people that they can charge with felonies, these are people that he takes off the voter poll. You have to understand the systematic madness that he's operating with. People think that he's trying to go out there and maintain justice in America. No, he's going out there, Charlton, taking people off the voter poll intentionally.
And I love our conversations because I tell you, we are the smartest sports show in the universe. And I mean that because there's so many guys in our business. And Portland's a beautiful city. I love driving through it. I don't like staying in it. I just love driving through it, if that makes any sense to you. But libertarian-leaning Kentucky Senator, one of your friends, Rand Paul, he tweeted that we cannot give up liberty for security, Big C, and we cannot give up liberty for security. Local law enforcement can and should be dealing with these situations. It's amazing that we're supposed to be able to protest and have freedom of speech and freedom of religion. But now, what I guess Donald Trump's son would say they're animals, but most of these protesters are white. I guess he still calls them animals, Big C. But when you have someone like Rand Paul, who's a good old boy, he's like one of the only ones, and he has his own good and bad about him. He's like the only one that's really saying anything anti-Trump. Senator Lindsey Graham, he's saying, well, whatever POTUS does, I support him, even though in 2015 he said POTUS was a bigot and a racist. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, when you look at the situation in Portland has 2 Democratic senators, okay?
Yep.
And they're up for election in 2020. And what his whole action is you take more Democrats off the voting rolls, Charlton, then potentially you can elect a Republican. Now, people don't sit back and look at the overall madness of what he's trying to accomplish. They look at the simplicity of what they see with their eyes and instead of understanding it in depth.
Yeah.
But as an American citizen, if you have a felony charge on your record, you're not allowed to vote. So think about how many people who are out there protesting. They're not protesting because they're Republicans, Charlton. They're protesting because they're Democrats.
Yep.
And so as many of these Democrats that you can make disappear, then most likely they won't be able to appear when it comes November 3rd.
Well, I know we have a country of diversity, a country that's going through good and bad, but I just know it's a shame that we predicted something like this would happen. There's going to be some type of anomaly that we create before the election, and when he stood in front of that church with his Bible upside down like Adolf Hitler did several decades ago, it's the same. This is like part 2 of the phase. POTUS did talk about as people are getting ready to see his baseball game. If they had cutout fans in Oakland last night, Big C, it weren't even real people, cutout fans, but it's taking the media's attention from federal troops to come into Oakland. That's crazy. But Trump says he's going to send law enforcement forces in, and this is for the white Americans that voted for him, and the handful of African Americans too. He's going to send in federal forces, similar to the deployment, the Homeland Security, in camouflage. Okay, camouflage. That means you can't tell if they're law enforcement or not. And we've seen this before. They're going from Oregon, and now they're talking about Oakland. They're looking at cities like New York, Chicago, Philadelphia, Detroit, and Baltimore, Big C. And that's a shame because there's so many people that are still saying they're willing to go out and stomp for him. It doesn't make any sense. As media is focused on who's going to win a game now, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, these are cities with large minority populations that he's attacking and also have Democratic mayors.
Yeah, they do. And I just hope people will get out and mail in your ballot if you can. It just makes so much sense. I know everybody has their thoughts, and I really want to ask you about this Black Lives Matter moment that we've seen. And as opposed to protesting and saying, I'm not going to play in this bubble because of what's going on in the streets right now with these federal troops moving in, Big C, I got to get your thoughts on it, and it's just my own opinion. So the NFL, in order to allow social justice, they're going to allow decals on helmets. And what does that do? It doesn't fight racism. It doesn't fight poverty. It doesn't fight the Rooney Rule. It doesn't fight what's happening in the streets. So is the NFL owner, without seeming like I'm naive, are they behind what POTUS is doing? Get these boys back on the field so they can distract American voters from what we're going to do to the citizens. Big C, your thoughts?
Charlton, completely. I mean, if you go back to something you always talk about, the preamble to the Constitution.
Yeah.
Why do we have to worry about Black Lives Matter if the preamble to the Constitution has legs to stand on in America? Why does not the Senate and the President make it a point to say, okay, I'm going to sign an executive order to abolish police brutality, to bring in jobs programs into these inner cities, Charlton? It's so easy, but we have the hypocrisy of these white men who will not allow it to happen. Now, you think about since we've had George Floyd's death, since COVID-19, you think about Jerry Jones, the biggest mouth in the NFL.
Yeah.
When you look for Jerry Jones, it's like turning on a light switch, and the next thing that shows up is a moth. That moth will be at the light, okay?
Yep.
Jerry Jones has not found a microphone, Charlton, in months.
Maybe he swallowed
He
it.
cannot find a microphone. And so when Jerry Jones speaks, everybody listens.
Yeah.
And yet Jerry Jones does not want things to change from what they are. He's a good friend of Donald Trump.
Yeah.
So as we look at the actions, and you see all these professional leagues trying to pacify the players.
Yeah.
We're going to let you write some slogan on the court. We're going to let you put a slogan on the back of your jersey.
Yeah.
We're going to let you put a slogan on your helmet.
Yep.
But damn it, why can't you pass a bill in the Senate and put a slogan there that Black Lives Matter?
Yeah, and I mean, that seems like it would make so much sense. But even for the Caucasian constituents that vote for him, J.J. Watt came out and said something the other day about, can you prove to us your plan for us to stay safe? Well, down in Houston, Texas, they're also planning to have some of these federal troops show up and harass people. Is J.J. Watt more concerned with the NFL keeping him safe? If he's not smart enough to know about COVID-19, I don't know what to say to him. But why not have a guy like J.J. Watt make a statement about why are federal troops harassing our fans who want to come out and support sports teams and stay safe? Does that make any sense? Why is it always about let's be dumb and just talk about football, Big C? They would listen to him more so than us, Big C. Your thoughts?
But why do the athletes always have to be the ones that's stumping for rights for the American citizens, Charlton? They're not the elected officials. They don't have these situations where they've been in Senate for 20 years. You think about Ted Cruz, the senator from Texas.
Yeah.
He's right there from that same home state. If Ted Cruz were to say Black Lives Matter, then all that problem would stop in Texas. You don't have to call on an athlete and put something on his helmet, on his jersey, to say, okay, we need to follow him.
Yeah.
We need to get these words from these white politicians in the Senate, Charlton. They control the Senate.
Yeah.
You think about any bill that they want to pass, they can pass. When you can appoint 200 judges, Charlton, in 3 years to lifetime appointments on the bench, you could have passed a bill that would have gave a lifetime of restitution to Negroes in America.
Yeah.
But you choose not to. You would rather elect a judge than to give Negroes sovereignty in America, Charlton.
Well, the reason I think athletes can't, it's like Me Too. How about athletes too? And the reason I say that, Big C, is we just mentioned it. You know, you give a baby a pacifier instead of some food. They just suck it on air. Kid don't know the difference, but maybe some kids do. They spit the pacifier out, if that makes sense to you, Big C. But some parents, the kids, pacifier, they put that pacifier, kids just sucking on air. There's no food behind it. But if enough athletes, they're going to put Black Lives Matter on a basketball court, which to me is an insult. I mean, I don't want to say like everything's an insult. It's like a pacifier. There's no nutrients in the pacifier, Big C. That Black Lives Matter on the court.
Where do they put Black Lives Matter, Charlton? Where do they put You've seen Black Lives Matter signs put on streets, have you not?
Yeah.
Painted on streets.
Yeah.
Now you're talking about putting them on basketball courts. What happens on streets? What do you do on streets? You roll over it, you step over it, you drive over it.
Yeah.
You put it on a basketball court. What do? You step on it all the time. You run over it all the time. You got to understand, where they're putting Black Lives Matter, that means that it's beneath everything else that means anything in America. You need to understand the psychology of it, Charlton. They're letting you know that Black Lives Matter is beneath everything else. The professional leagues are telling you that. The government officials are telling you that. Go ahead and put it on the street. We'll run over it all day long with cars.
Yeah.
We'll have people step on it all day long. Oh, yeah, we're going to allow you to put it on the NBA court, Adam Silver.
Yeah.
Hell, what are your black players and white players going to do? They're going to stomp on it all game.
Yeah.
They're going to stomp it into the ground. So put it up above people, Charlton, where they have to look up to it. You look up the things that are promising in life, okay?
Yeah.
You're not taught to look down and think that you can achieve. You're taught to look up, to achieve, and to ascend. You're putting this beneath everything that matters in America. You're making it a low-meaning statement. It's like the thing, the adage that they always call the low-hanging fruit.
Yeah.
That's what they've done with Black Lives Matter.
Well, that's one way to look at it. But I'll tell you, there's a lot of clergy all over the world. When they pray, they put their heads down, not up. That's just the thought. But I understand. But rather
when they preach a sermon,
yeah,
are they looking at? They tell you to look to what for redemption, Charlton? What do the clergy tell you to look up to? They tell you to look up to the heavens, don't they?
Well, when you pray,
they tell you about ascending.
Yeah,
ascending to the heavens. Christ is in heaven. They tell you about ascending. They don't talk about. What do they tell you that's down low? They tell you hell is down, don't they, in the clergy?
Well, they say
when hell is down below you. So that's what it's in Black Lives Matter.
Well, I just disagree with that. When I was taught to pray with my grandfather and anyone I've ever known, they said, let's bow our heads in prayer. It didn't mean bow your head down to the devil, Big C, but everybody has their own opinion about that. But I do say, because I thought we were making some progress. I know progress comes with resistance. But I thought that a lot of our intelligent black men, especially in this time and age, if you can't get past November 3rd, you just don't see the things that are going on. NBA basketball put the Black Lives Matter on the court, as you mentioned, in Orlando. It doesn't accomplish anything. There's no new laws to combat voter obstruction, which is happening right now. The voter obstruction is happening right now in Portland. They're planning on coming into Oakland. They're planning on Chicago, Detroit, Baltimore. And we got Black Lives Matter on the street as opposed to challenging voter obstruction. There's no GI Bill that's proposed for black Americans like Truman did for white Americans in 1948. And it can be done so easily with the stroke of a pen. The only reparations bill that was passed in North Carolina. It's the first step. There's many bricks to build a house. It's the first step. I would love to see that be more talked about than, hey, they put something on the court and let's all step on it, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you think about those local magistrates, Charlton, that passed a bill for reparations. What does that mean? Do you have the understanding or the wording of what those reparation bills stand for, Charlton? You think about what you do in a local city. You still have to get to the state Senate. You also have to get past the state Supreme Court to make it a law.
Yeah. And every mile starts with the first step. Every building starts with the first brick. And it's unlike saying no, they're saying yes. The city of Asheville, North Carolina, unanimously voted to give financial reparations to black Americans. And that's important because that's more important for Black Lives Matter than spray painting Black Lives Matter on the street or on a basketball court. And I really wish, Big C, we passed cannabis in the United States of America. Cannabis is legal on a state level in most states, still illegal on the federal level. But a lot of these guys at the federal level might be smoking it because it doesn't make any sense. But Asheville becomes one of the first cities to approve reparations, joining the city of Evanston, Illinois, which approved a reparations measure in 2019. And it's an extension that Evanston is actually taxing the legal cannabis industry to help the black community. Now, people might say, whoa, what is that about? Just like alcohol, the Kennedys, when you open a liquor, the Kennedys still get money from that. And I think what Evanston is doing, I know everybody doesn't agree with it, but they're taxing legal cannabis, the industry, to help the black community, Big C. That's a start. That's better than spray painting Black Lives Matter on a sidewalk, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, why limited to the cannabis industry? Go to the pharmaceutical industry, because the pharmaceutical industry is what destroyed many of black communities and minority communities, Charlton.
Yeah.
And tax the alcohol, Charlton, it is also a harboring of the minority community. That's where you're going to get more inroads if you tax those to industries, Charlton, and allow that money to siphon down to the minority community. You say cannabis is going to be limited as far as compared to those others, which majority of those populations utilize.
Big C, that's a very good point. I like that point. And just like building a house is one brick at a time, I do want to mention the name before I get on to some things that I'm not ashamed to talk about sports, but when you have Portland, Oregon, with federal troops harassing people, and people want to know if Damian Lillard, who signed a $200 million contract, is going to lead Portland to a championship. That's just, I have no idea what people are thinking. But I do want to congratulate Councilman Keith Young. He's one of only 2 black council members, Big C, and that helped sponsor that bill. He said it's simply not enough to remove statues. It's not enough to paint Black Lives Matter on the street or a basketball court or put it on your shirt. Black Americans in this country have been dealing with issues that are systemic in nature, and he said that after the bill passed. So the bill has passed, and now it's about how to make it better. But you can't make something better unless it's on the books, and they got it on the books. And I think the next administration, as a lawyer that I talked to today, agrees that at least you get it in writing. Nothing happens in court until you get it in writing, and that's a step in the right direction. Big C, your thoughts?
But and I'll still go back to the point, Charlton. You've had a Senate in the United States forever. You've had presidencies in the United States forever. What's so difficult about all those white senators making it a law in the United States, Charlton? You're going to make it a law to build a wall on the southern border to keep people out. You can make it laws for anything that you want in America, Charlton. Why is it so difficult to make laws that's going to benefit black Americans?
Just like in North Carolina, it's a process. They put it to vote. Not many people thought it would have passed, but it did pass. And like the lawyer that I talked to today, Big C, I don't know why. Well, the universe had me meet with the woman, and we're talking about her on the show today. And as she said, and everyone knows in court, nothing happens in court until you file a motion. And so the thing that happens before you file a motion is you have to have dialogue. You have to have the dialogue. And I love that Big C Sports creates that dialogue. We'll talk about sports too, but I would be ashamed if I'm in a city, Northern California, where the president wants to send in some federal troops, and I'm here saying, Big C, I can't wait till the game starts tonight, Big C. I can't wait until they throw out the first pitch in San Francisco. And that's a shame that a lot of people have succumbed to intelligence. They just want to know who's going to win a game. But I appreciate what that lawyer said. I appreciate your thought about the Senate. But every single thing starts with conversation, and it takes people who can see it. You got to be present to see it, and that conversation is going to keep happening as more people talk about it. I do want to touch on one more thing on POTUS. I know that some people don't want to hear this because they want to know who won a game, and we talk about the North Carolina city that approved the reparations for African Americans. And I'm going to say this because it's a pretty sad dog that won't wag its own tail. And it's a pretty sad parent that gives a baby a pacifier instead of some food. I mean, that's my own thought, though, Big C. But if you think about this, we were talking about reparations. I know you were saying it's never going to happen, and I was saying it will. And everything happens in conversation. Everything around you in your life right now, every single thing, anyone in the universe, everything around you in your life, at one time it was just a thought. And then people put their thoughts on paper, and then you give that thought to attorneys and other lawyers who can make it happen, and then you put it to a vote. And just like in North Carolina, people voted yes. And I believe that's what's going to happen on November 3rd, that people are going to look for the better hope and the better good, and things happen with conversation, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, like I said, we still got a white Senate that refuses to allow Negroes to have equality in America. It is so simple. We have a president that will disallow Negroes having opportunity for equality in America. And I know you constantly state the preamble to the Constitution. The preamble to the Constitution, and I think all those men are intelligent enough to read what it means. But it's not their thought process, Charlton, to recognize that and allow that to occur in this country during their lifetime.
Yeah, and just like the reparations wasn't passed in prior to this month, Big C, but things happen with the change. And what's going to come up with the change? We got to change it to the Big C pause, also known as the Big C timeout. It happens too fast. We'll be back in just a moment. All right, we're back from the Big C Timeout, also known as the Big C Pause. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. You can follow Big C. We're now actually on Spotify. Come on, Joe Rogan. I just want the people at Spotify, you give the man $100 million, and congratulations, but at least let us compete. All we ask for is like Ali. Give me a chance to defend my title, Big C. That makes sense to you, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, you're defending your title every day to John. It's about being consistent in the message that you deliver and don't waver from it. Everybody has their own taste out there as far as what they want and what they like. Yep. I like doing what we do. Joe Rogan likes doing what he does. I've never listened to him on radio, but evidently he has a pretty good mouth.
Yeah, it's a pretty blabbity blub blub is his mouth, but he cusses a lot, Big C. I tried to add a little bit of profanity, but I didn't feel good doing it. I'd rather just do things with my own intellect as opposed to profanity, but maybe I'm wrong, Big C. But I do want to say this one thing, because as they're getting ready for the A's, they're in San Francisco tonight at 24 Willie Mays Plaza to say, hey, kid, Big C. Nobody's going to be there but some cutout people in the stands. But POTUS, he took time during a press conference to wish a lady by the name of Mrs. Maxwell, wished her well, and she happened to be an associate of former sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein, and he wished her well as he sends in federal troops to Portland. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, you think about how low can the administration get? That you're sending best wishes to a pedophile sex peddler, Charlton, from the White House press podium.
Yeah.
This is where our country is. You're giving well wishes to a sex offender, pedophile, sex trafficker, Charlton, and yet you don't give a damn about Black Lives Matter. You're having black people arrested in America, and you're hoping the best for a sex offender.
Yeah, and people don't know that, but I just want to be honest. They're like I said before, those are white Americans up in Portland that they're rounding up and grabbing them in cars, unmarked cars, and that's the constituent base that voted for them. People got to understand that it's a deeper thing than what somebody is skin color-wise. It's a shame as people want to see if the Portland can win the championship or can the Giants beat the A's tonight. But I just appreciate bringing it up, Big C, because not too many people do, and they just put their head back in the sand to watch somebody dribble up and down the court. So I do want to ask you this thing. As Major League Baseball, San Francisco Giants, Gabe Kapler, he became the first manager, Big C, to kneel during the national anthem with his players last night over in Oakland versus the A's. They beat the A's 6-2, becoming the first manager to take a knee. And it's about progress. It's about making a stand. But we need people to change legislation. Taking knees is fine. Painting Black Lives Matter on your street is fine. But as the lawyer said to me, she said you got to change things first with conversation, and then you got to file motions in the court. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, what Gabe Kapler did last night in Oakland was very admirable. He's been the first coach, manager of a professional organization, Charlton, to take a knee. And he got backlash from your friend in the White House also for doing it last night. But you think about this stance, Charlton, that he took. Of all the people in everywhere, he's in one of the most liberal cities in America, in San Francisco, being the manager of that organization. But his statement that he made, he made the statement that this is not about disrespecting the flag.
Right.
Anyone who is stupid enough to still use that slogan, that this is what it's all about, is anti-American.
Yeah.
Because this is about police injustice and social injustice. What this kneeling is about, Charlton, it's not about disrespecting anybody. It's about trying to enact social change.
Yeah. Which
white society is so resistant against in America, Charlton, because it's so easy. When you have white society that outnumbers black society, if there wants it to be a change, Charlton, that change comes with a stroke of a pen. It's very simple. Put it on the ballot, vote it on.
Yeah.
But we got so much resistance. I understand you have to take small steps and a brick at a time to get something built, Charlton. But think about how many times blacks have been stepped on. Think about how many times blacks have been hit with bricks. Think about the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Alabama, Selma, Alabama, where we just lost the late John Lewis. who marched on that bridge and almost lost his life.
Yeah.
Because of those statements, Charlton. Why do we have to fight so hard that it's supposed to be an inalienable right of all Americans?
Yeah.
Why is it so hard and difficult for blacks to get equality in this country, to just have a seat at the table, to be able to walk into the room while the door is still open? Why does white society hate that so much to give blacks equality?
You know, I wanna add something too, because it's not just about black Americans. Mark Cuban, who owns the Dallas Mavericks, Big C, he calls the national anthem police out of control and drew the ire of Senator Ted Cruz, one of your friends down in Texas. So he said that for the national anthem police, people who take issue with athletes kneeling during the pregame song, he called out both Mark Davis, another one of your friends down in Vegas now, of all places, from Oakland to Las Vegas. What a world, what a bargain, only in America. And he said it also on a Dallas-Fort Worth market, Big C, down in Texas. And then they started having a back and forth. What is it about white men that fight white men about why Black Lives Matter, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, you got one white man, Charlton, who employs a lot of black men and have made them millionaires. You got another white man who is old-time establishment. Ted Cruz is the guy, Charlton, that can make a difference in society, not Mark Cuban.
Yeah.
He's a member of the Senate, Charlton. He can bring a bill in front of the Senate to say Black Lives Matter.
Yeah.
That is against his motto, Charlton. He is never going to do that. Mark Cuban does not have the power of a senator. He can go and boast anything he wants on Twitter, in the media, anytime that he wants.
Yeah.
But Ted Cruz will never sit aside Mark Cuban and say, I agree with you on these things. Because as long as I'm a United States Senator, we will never have black equality in America.
Well, the people in North Carolina gave everybody a footprint. I'll never change the name Washington Redskins. I'll never do it. And Snyder's changing it, Big C. North Carolina, Big C, a tobacco state, Jim Crow state. Reparations passed.
But think about this, Charlton. You talk about Mark Cuban. Who's the biggest mouth in Texas, Charlton?
Actually, the one that speaks, that's Cuban, even though people might think it's Jerry Jones.
No. It's your boy down in Dallas, Jerry Jones.
Your friend.
Jerry Jones is the biggest mouth in Texas.
Yeah.
Jerry Jones has more power than anybody in Texas. And you tell me in the last 4 years since Colin Kaepernick has taken a knee, that Jerry Jones has got up behind a mic and say, Black Lives Matter, I stand behind him 100%, and we need to have new legislation in this country with my buddy, Donald Trump,
right,
and get that changed.
Well, he did take a knee one time. Jerry Jones took a knee. I think he bent down to shine his cowboy boots, Big C, but he did take a knee. I saw it at a football stadium, even though they didn't do it continually. But maybe Jerry Jones, maybe he doesn't agree with Black Lives Matter. So why would you take a knee? There's a picture I don't really care about. It's just a joke. But
Jerry Jones said if players take a knee, they will not work for the Dallas Cowboys. After he did that one photo op after that first week, Charlton.
Yeah.
After that, he said if any player takes a knee, he will not work for the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah.
That's Jerry Jones' stance. The same stance that Ted Cruz has.
Yeah, well, people can change, Big C. It changed in North Carolina, and your friend, Mr. Snyder, who owns the Washington Redskins, he changed. Big C, change is coming. The change is coming. It just happens slowly.
The only reason Daniel Snyder did that because he had the option of doing that or lose the team. They gave him an option. He didn't do that willingly. They cut a deal with Daniel Snyder, Charlton. You say that you're going to abolish the name Redskins, otherwise you lose the team. That's the deal he made with the rest of the owners.
Sometimes pressure, like the lawyer said to me today, they cut deals all the time. When people are under pressure, they take the deal. I'm telling you, change is coming, Big C. Mark my words. NFL news, Las Vegas, it's hard to even say this. Las Vegas Raiders owner, how did Mark Davis become the owner of the Raiders? Did he work his way up to the franchise, Big C? Or was he just born from a pacifier, the right pacifier, Big C?
Well, he worked his way up to the franchise, Charlton. He's been around doing nothing until his father passed, laid out Davis.
Yeah.
And then he took control of the organization.
Yeah, so he didn't need the Rooney Rule, and he didn't need any type of help to get in the organization, but he moved him down to Las Vegas, Nevada. But Mark Davis said, there's a realistic possibility that the NFL season will be canceled, and he doesn't know how the NFL can control COVID-19 if he thinks the NFL season is going to be canceled, that might be the truest thing he said, Big C. But they're at least going to try to start it. Your thoughts?
Well, he's being realistic and honest about that, Charlton. I mean, the NFL really doesn't have a plan to control COVID-19. You're talking about the filthiest professional sport there is in America, Charlton.
Yeah.
And that's playing football. It's filthier than boxing and MMA.
Yeah.
Because you're talking about a 3-hour event, Charlton, where something else takes less than an hour.
Yeah.
And those other events. You think about the contamination inside a football helmet, Charlton. Our helmets were cleaned daily.
Yeah.
That's how bad they are. They've developed bacteria inside of them, as well as the shoulder pads do, Charlton. You have to have a couple of pairs of shoulder pads.
Yeah.
So as you're talking about controlling bacteria, COVID-19 is a pathogen. People need to get over that crap that, if you just wash your hands and stuff, you're going to be okay.
Right.
No, you got to stop breathing if you want to be okay. You got to stop spitting and all that. You got to stop passing body fluids. That's what it's from. And as I tell everybody, and people don't want to hear that, the filtration system of your body, Charlton, is your kidneys. Every bit of liquid that is excreted from your body comes from your kidneys. And it's all the same liquid, Charlton. So your sweat is the same thing as your urine.
Yeah.
So that's what you're passing on to other individuals as you're having contact in a heated contact sport.
Yeah.
So you're constantly passing pathogens as you touch each other. You can have all the face masks on that you want.
Yep.
But as your body is touching that other player around the neck, Charlton, around the arms, wherever, you're passing back and forth body fluid.
Yeah, it's like kissing somebody, Big C. That's why they stopped The Bachelor. They put The Bachelor on hiatus. Nobody wanted to kiss a woman and risk getting COVID-19. No matter how good looking she is. Well, I can't say nobody. I can never say never, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, hey, as much as I've been sitting at home lately, I might go and
I'm about to put lipstick on a pig, Big C. It's all looking good to me. It's all fair level war. But NFL owners, they had a meeting on Monday to discuss COVID-related issues. As Mark Davis said, there's a chance that the league won't even tip off or kick off, Big C. But health and safety measures, financial numbers of preseason games, there's not going to be any preseason games. They finally moved that line back in the sand, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, they're just looking at finances altogether, Charlton. You're talking about going into a season without playing any preseason games. It would be a struggle at the start of the NFL season, Charlton. But they're looking at the financials.
Yeah.
That's all they're looking at. They know if they start the season, then that television money kicks in.
Yeah.
So why waste it on preseason games, Charlton? But there's no measures in that meeting, Charlton, as far as keeping players safe. They're going to test players every day for the first 2 weeks of training camp. You got to realize that's going to cost the NFL potentially this year $750 million.
Yeah.
$750 million to test every player the first 2 weeks of training camp. You think after that the NFL is saying, we're going to cut our losses, and what are they going to do when players start testing positive?
Deny
how are they going to quarantine them? How are they going to let them back into the huddle, Charlton?
Yeah.
These are the things you're not talking about. And so what if you have 5 starting quarterbacks test positive in the NFL, Charlton, and they have to be set down for 2 to 3 weeks where they can't come back into the facility? How are they going to handle that? How is that going to affect some of the top teams in the NFL?
You know what they'll do, Big C? They'll do the same thing when other big athletes get into a situation they didn't want to tell them. They'll say they retired to play baseball for a couple of weeks, if that makes any sense to you. You can read between the lines. I want to go up across the border because Canada's a beautiful place. I love Canada, Big C. That the CFL, the Edmonton Eskimos, they haven't really confirmed it. I mean, they're saying they have and they haven't. Like the Washington Redskins, there are some people saying that there are a lot of critics of the name Edmonton Eskimos. It's a derogatory colonial era term for the Inuit. And they're thinking about changing that name because a lot of people said it's insensitive, just like the Washington Redskins name is insensitive. And it seems like a lot of the times when people said, I'll never change it, this is the year of change. There's a lot of times people say, we'll never have an African-American president. Well, we know that's happened. I hate using the word never because there are times when people just say never. And never is not a good answer for anything, Big C. But I think I didn't think about that. Edmonton Eskimos could seem insensitive, and there's some people in the organization in Canada that are thinking about changing that name, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, it did become official today that they've dropped the moniker Eskimos, Charlton, and it will be the Edmonton Football Club until they can get a new name for that organization. I believe they started using that name around 1949.
Okay.
Is when they started using it. That organization has won 14 championships up there north of the border, Charlton. I mean, the great Warren Moon played with that organization when he left the University of Washington. That's the only place he could get a job as a quarterback prior to coming back to the NFL, and he was responsible for 5 of those championships during his tenure up in Canada. But, you know, the Canada seems to move a little quicker than what we do in the U.S. when it comes to dealing with the indigenous people of their country, Charlton. And it's a proud move for that organization to accept the understanding and the respect for the indigenous people of Canada. Yeah,
I mean, that's a good thing. I just didn't know it, but now that I'm glad my mind was open to it. I want to stick to Canada for a little bit, Big C, because I want Trudeau to drop that, what they call that wall. We have an invisible, we can't get into Canada. He's nicer about his wall. POTUS wanted a Mason wall built to keep the brown menace out, but Trudeau wants to keep the white menace out of Canada, Big C. That makes sense to you? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, you respect the Prime Minister of Canada saying that the U.S. is a country that has not gotten COVID-19 pandemic under control, so he's not going to allow the transport back and forth between the two borders of citizens, Charlton. And you respect the leader of a country for that. He put a blockade up saying that U.S. citizens won't be allowed to come into Canada, and he's standing behind it, not just the citizens, but the athletes, Charlton. And so you think about what that means, that if the NHL comes back, there won't be any NHL games played in Canada. They'll all have to be played in the United States. He told the Toronto Blue Jays to go hiking, you know, pack up your little nest and fly down south for the summer. Go down to the U.S. and play baseball. So, you know, you got to respect the leader of a country, Charlton, when he has his finger on the pulse of this pandemic that's going on. Maybe Trump need to call him and ask him, how are you so successful and I'm not?
Maybe POTUS did, because he said that he understands that using masks is probably a smart thing. Even he took one day in his science class, Big C. But Trudeau says he wants to keep people out from that S-hole country from invading Canada, Big C. That's what I'm reading between the lines. Major League Baseball, as you mentioned, in Canada, the government stated that it will not allow Major League Baseball players into Canada from this S-hole country that POTUS has made an S-hole country, Big C. And he said the start of the new Major League Baseball season, he does not want Americans. Does POTUS understand what an American is? He doesn't want Americans from this S-hole country, Big C, coming into their country, infecting Canadian citizens. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you know, it was a bold move by the Prime Minister of Canada. You know, you talk about the president talking about people should wear face masks. This is just a political ploy from him, Charlton. He doesn't give a damn about the American citizens. These are the same citizens that were there back in March when he made the statement it's just going to go away. And I believe that we've had 4 months pass since then. We had 1 American death in the early part of March, Charlton. We have 142,000 Americans that have lost their lives in a matter of 4 months to COVID-19. 142,000.
Wow.
And he said it's a good idea to wear masks. Where was he at 4 months ago? Where was the hell he at thinking about American citizens and American lives? He was worried about messing up his hairdo, Charlton, and didn't give a damn about Americans staying alive. And he went at it with a lackluster thing today. Well, you know, I got one in my pocket, and I wear it sometimes. No, you don't. You do a photo op. You did it twice. 2 photo ops you've done with a mask. As Americans are dying every day. And you're talking about, he's saying that, you know, we're on top of the pandemic, that, you know, we got it under control, and if we didn't test so many people, that we wouldn't have so many positive tests. You think about it, Charlton. We're testing some 70,000 Americans a day.
Wow.
Okay? 70,000 Americans a day. But the positive rate, Charlton, is 176% of what's being tested.
Well,
so how is that equating that if we test less, we're going to have less?
Well, you were asking where was the president. I guess he can't find Stormy Daniels, so Kaylee Magalini's been doing some extra overtime work, if that makes any sense. Her husband's like, you working overtime, how come your paycheck's the same? It's all fair level work, Big C. People do. Hey, well, overtime, you should still get a bump on your paycheck, but she's working all that overtime, if you read between the lines. I want to talk about some other people working a lot of overtime, Big C. Man, our show goes by too fast. Nearly half of major college football, men's and basketball and football coaches have taken a voluntary pay cut in response to financial crisis, facing higher education because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And a lot of the highest paid coaches, like Kelly Magalini, they're working overtime, but they're not showing more money. They're not taking a pay cut. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you know, when you think about that, and America's in crisis, where we've had 45 million Americans unemployed, and we've had the Senate talking about a $600 a week stimulus check is too much to be giving American citizens, that it disincentivizes them from wanting to go back to work. I don't know if people want to sit at home, Charlton, and not be productive individuals. It's very destroying mentally and physically on individuals. People like to go out and earn their worth.
Yeah.
But if there's no job to go back to, then you can't say that people don't want to go back to work. But when you think about the selfishness of these college and basketball, football coaches in these states, Charlton, has been hard hit with this coronavirus pandemic, and saying, hell no, I'm not taking a pay cut. I'm going to get all of my millions because I know if we play, I'm going to be worth it. But if we don't play, you owe it to me anyway.
You owe it to me anyway, Big C. Two of the highest paid coaches, John Calipari and then Texas football coach Tom Herman, he makes $6.75 million a year, have not taken pay cuts, even though the universities announced reduced pay for other employees that have been furloughed and layoffs. College coaches that have not taken a pay cut, Dabo Swinney, Dabo, let's pray. He looks down when he prays, Big C. From Clemson, Nick Saban, your friend at Alabama when you guys go fishing. Jimbo Fisher, Texas A&M, Kirby Smart, Georgia, Gus Malzahn, Auburn, Tom Herman, Texas, Jeff Braun, Purdue, Dan Mullen, Florida. These coaches earn between $6.1 million and $9.3 million a year. Big C, your thoughts?
And you think about that, Charlton, where you're working at a university and you are a state employee if you are a collegiate football coach.
Yeah. And
you have co-workers that work in that administration being furloughed from their job, Charlton, or even being terminated.
Yeah.
And you're holding on to 100% of your salary instead of deferring some of that salary back into the funds of the university to keep those co-workers employed. That shows you the selfishness of these individuals. And if they're that selfish that they want co-workers unemployed, Charlton, how in the hell you think that they're going to care about the student athlete who's out there on the field, whether he gets COVID-19 or not?
No, they don't care, Big C. It's about get me my money. I do want to compliment two coaches taking pay cuts. Jim Harbaugh, Michigan, Lincoln Riley, Oklahoma, two storied programs, and they took a pay cut. Again, I want to touch on this again. Highest paid basketball coaches not taking a pay cut. John Calipari, Kentucky. Mike Cronin, UCLA. Rick Barnes, Tennessee. Chris Beard, Texas Tech. Roy Williams, North Carolina. These coaches make between $4.1 and $8.2 million a year. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, and that's where it stands. When you look at this and you talk about the improprieties and the unfairness in this country, and this is the reason why you don't see Negro coaches, Charlton, getting these jobs at these big-time universities that pay this exorbitant amount of money. It's hard for white society to see a black man make that kind of money on the collegiate level, even though they've been successful and they won national titles, Charlton, on the basketball side, and they've been productive on the football side.
Yeah.
But they're the first to be fired. But here it is, Charlton, that it shows you the callousness of these individuals, that when you have coworkers that you have dealt with on that same university faculty staff lose their jobs, and you're unwilling to release some of that money of those millions that you make to keep them employed, because I can guarantee you, Charlton, they don't earn a 20th of what these coaches do.
No, and there's some good guys out there too, Big C. Coach K, Coach Krzyzewski, he's taking a pay cut out of Duke. Tom Izzo, Michigan State. Chris Mack, Louisville. Bill Self, Kansas. Jay Wright, Villanova. They've done some good things. They're doing what they can. Not a lot of people will gladly take money out of their pocket. I want to, man, before we get up on the, man, that show goes by way too fast, Big C. I guess I got to be looking out for these federal troops. They're camouflage that POTUS sent in to protect America. Big C, NBA, basketball. LeBron James has signed a limited edition rookie card for himself. I think it sold for $1.84 million at auction. There were only 53 cards. But LeBron's a smart man. He's making money anytime he gets a chance. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, you think about that. That's the most expensive modern-day sports card of all time, Jonathan. $1.8 million.
Yeah.
And I think LeBron's been in the NBA now 17 years, so that card is worth a little more than $100,000 a year that LeBron has played in college. But think about it. There was only 53 of those cards produced and signed by LeBron James, Jonathan.
Yeah.
But think about how slick the King is. Everybody has cards from their rookie year that they've hung on to. I got a few hanging around in a closet somewhere here now.
Yeah.
And I know the King has at least a half dozen of them sitting in the house. So you think about that.
Yeah.
That card is worth $1.84 million.
Yep.
So every one of those cards that disappeared, Charlton, out of the 53 raises the value of that card. And you can bet LeBron has 5 or 6 of them that he kept for himself.
Yeah.
So you know if LeBron ever gets on a tough day, he can trade in a card for $2 million in a heartbeat.
I'm still looking for the Big C card to come out $1.8 million, Big C. But with all that money being tossed around, the NBA, what's going to happen really in the bubble when some of the players start to bring social diversion into the bubble in Orlando? You know they want people to shut up and dribble, but what's going to happen when people start talking more, because they'll be able to talk more without the crowd overbearing their voice? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, the social diversion that players will bring into the bubble, Charlton, is company.
Yeah.
You know, they've had food brought in, but, you know, that only satisfies one thing. So they're going to eventually bring in some company. You've been in the bubble 6 weeks, 2 months, and like, hey, I'm getting a little backed up here. And so players will start trying to sneak in some social company. That's what they're going to do.
Yeah.
And how will the league handle that, Charlton? Will they put these players in quarantine? Because you got to understand the young players that don't have wives and things like that, even the ones who have wives, some have girlfriends.
Yeah.
So, you know, and in Orlando's a hot spot. A lot of good-looking women down there.
Yeah.
But, you know, as a player, you're going to get tired of looking at your teammates after a while.
Yeah.
And say, this ain't what I signed up for. And I'm going to do me a sneak job. And what's going to happen when somebody tests positive for COVID-19 or get caught with some outside company?
Yeah, like that old lady that had a TV commercial back in the day. She said, "Where's the beef?" I'm sure men want to know where's the fast food burger, Big C. That's all fair in Level War, man. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. I really appreciate all the apps that are on Big C. I know today, Northern California, University of California, Berkeley, they're saying no kids on campus for the fall of 2020. I don't know how they're going to play football without kids on campus. UC Berkeley, that's a great school in the Pac-12. I know other schools will follow, just like the SWAC today made a move. College football is moved to the spring. It just happens a little bit slower on the left coast, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I mean, this has been a slow-motion wave across the United States as conference leaders and athletic directors have stood up and tried to understand how are you possibly going to be able to play sports.
Yeah.
I mean, and you have to be realistic about it. As you look at California, one of the hottest spiking states in the country as far as COVID-19, and I think you guys have 4 universities out there in the Pac-12 conference. And we look at Arizona that has a couple teams in the Pac-12 conference.
Yep.
You look at Texas, you look at Alabama, you look at Florida. And so you're talking the SEC and the Big 12 that is encumbered in those states, Charlton, Power 5 conferences. And you have to be realistic about this online learning that these universities are talking about. And if they go to virtual learning, Charlton, it's impossible to play sports.
Yeah, they've already started virtual learning. They just did it for the spring, to finish the spring for high schools and colleges too. And for anyone that saw the game in Oakland last night, the Giants and the A's, they pumped in some sound, but they pumped in sound like TV shows. Nothing wrong with that. But if you look at it, those guys are making a lot of money, millions. College players not making any money. It doesn't make sense to risk the health of young players when science is telling you one thing and the man that's making the money from you playing is telling you another, but they're not out there on the field with you. And I'm going to just look at the San Francisco Giants game tonight against the A's in San Francisco. No fans in the stands, just some cutout cardboards, but it's all fair and love and war. I just hope everybody stays safe. Pay attention to these troops that POTUS has sent in. Now that we're talking about Black Lives Matter and let's play ball again, nobody's really paying attention to these federal troops that are invading American cities to rough up and intimidate even white people, Big C, as we can't wait to get back to the game. Big C, back in the day, there's a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, with all you got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young man, rumble. Big C, what are you looking forward to in this sports universe?
Well, Charlton, the clock is officially ticking on the return of professional sports in the United States. Less than 48 hours from now, Charlton will have the start of the Major League Baseball season with the crickets playing in the background. So once again, I also want to say thank you and stay safe to our frontline healthcare workers, nurses, doctors, first responders. We got nothing but mad respect for you for the sacrifices and the effort you make every day to keep Americans alive.
They keep Americans alive, and you can stay alive too every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide when you follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. As we always tell you, there's never, ever an excuse for racism or domestic violence. If you know any man, woman, or child going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and call 911, because no man, woman, or child should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.